Terrible Old Games You Probably Never Heard Of is a hell of a name for a book, isn't it? Not like we're going to talk with crowdfunding analysis time, but a book. Yes, we are talking about a book today. I know you, I'm not going to play into the cliche that gamers are dumb and are averse to reading. You got this. Plus, this book is written by a YouTuber with over 1 million subscribers, so I'm hoping that'll get this video a few more views. Stuart Ashen of the channel Ashens used to have an ongoing series called Terrible Old Games You Probably Never Heard Of, in which he'd look at terrible old games that you likely genuinely haven't heard of. We all know about stuff like E.T. on the Atari 2600, Big Rigs on PC, and Fallout 4, but what about Nightwalk on the ZX Spectrum or Oriental Hero on the Amiga? He doesn't need us advertising his videos, but suffice to say I was a big fan. So when he announced he was writing a book version of the series, as well as seeking crowdfunding support to do so, you can imagine my excitement. Using a new crowdfunding site specifically for books called Unbound, Ashen successfully raised, 438% of his goal. Yeah, the bad thing about Unbound is that they don't tell you what the funding goal is, or how much money it's earned overall. They're also a traditional book publisher, meaning that they themselves print the books, and whatever sales the book makes outside the crowdfunding portion, they take a certain cut of the profits. I'm really not sure what benefits it has over Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but whatever, it's a book site, so it's not our problem. The Unbound campaign page is pretty light, but it's to be expected since this is a book. There really isn't much for you to say other than what it's about and why you're the one to make this book happen. That being said, Ashens finds plenty to talk about, going into detail about the contents of the book, a video on why he's decided to write the book, and providing a few mock-up pages. He's also promised other features, if you want to call them that, like getting interviews. Terrible Old Games You Probably Never Heard Of is a compendium of some of the most painfully bad games available for the European home computer market from the early 80s to the mid-90s, based on my YouTube series of the same name. It's meticulously researched and written with the dry humor you'd expect from a man who has somehow made a living sticking rubbish on a sofa and talking about it. The only problem, and this is a huge one and what stopped me from backing it, is that it's a British site, and international shipping costs are massive. To get a physical copy, that's how I roll, was $36 plus $20 to ship, and for a book that's only about 150 pages long. The page number is deceptive though, as the book itself is one of the smallest I've ever seen. It's a perfect little square, oddly. If it were a regularly sized book, it'd probably only be about half as long. An attempt to make it look longer than it actually is, or a stylistic choice. Who knows? As far as negative comments go, that's really all I've got. I eventually just bought it on Amazon. The writing style is what you'd expect from Ashens. It's the kind of dry British humor that's trendy these days, but it never comes across as forced with him. Best of all, it's as informative as it is funny, listing detailed information about the games, talking about how they came to be, what systems they were made for, what reviews were like at the time, and a walkthrough on how to play. There are also interviews with other retro gamers and YouTubers. Ashens managed to find game journalists from the 80s and got them to write about their most disappointing games they played back in the day. These provide a good breakup to Ashens' style and adds an extra layer of insight on British PC gaming in the 80s, something you're really not going to find very often. Here's a little snippet so you can judge for yourself. Count Duckula 2, Amstrad CPC, released in 1992, and published by Alternative Software. Cost £3.99. The Amstrad CPC suffered from a horrible plague throughout its lifespan that affected many of the games released for it. It was a particularly insidious disease known as lazy ZX Spectrum conversion. The only cure was an injection of money and time from the game publishers, and as you're probably aware from the contents of this book, that medication was in extremely short supply. This is a fantastic book, and Ashens did a great job at sticking to what he said he'd deliver, and didn't blow all the money on some ridiculous interactive pop-up book or something like that. Terrible Old Games is the perfect example of a book that needed crowdfunding in order to be made. It's about terrible old video games from the 80s, and actual terrible old games, not just the popular ones everyone likes to make fun of, so marketing would have been next to impossible. It's a very niche subject, and if you're not interested in old 80s computer games, and you're not a fan of Ashens or British humor, you probably won't like this, though you can admire the respect that went to the campaign itself. It's a great read if you're interested in this kind of thing, and a great example of a crowdfunding campaign delivering on time and on budget without making any sacrifices in terms of scope or quality. It was a bit of a tenuous topic for a video on our channel, but hey, At least we might get a shout out from a 1,000,000 subscriber YouTuber out of it. I mean, it's something we felt we had to cover. Yeah.